Welcome to this week's episode of the Whitetail Watch produced by Hoyt's Bow Hunting Whitetails. Today is the 13th of December and we're looking forward to the weekend of the 16th and the 17th. In most parts of the country, the regular firearm seasons have come and gone. So now we're into what I would call the classic late season hunting situation. And it's not going to change now until the season ends in just about every state. It's going to be the same focus, the same strategy, the same approach to the hunt. The behavior is not going to change much. So this is my last whitetail watch for the year. I'm not going to come back each week and talk about the same exact thing, and then just look at the forecast ahead and try to make adjustments based on that. You can do that yourself. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about what the behavior is, what we can expect, and then how you can, like I said, look at the forecast and determine, what are the best opportunities. It's pretty simple. So first we're going to talk about what we've been seeing, then we'll take a break and we'll come back and talk about strategy and how we're going to approach the week ahead. Ethan and I went out to Nebraska to hunt. He filmed and I hunted, and it was a good hunt. I mean, it's a property that we just had 3 days to hunt it, so we didn't have a lot of opportunity to do our own scouting or even to really put together a plan. We just relied on the guy that owns the land to recommend spots, and he did a good job. I mean, he knows the farm. We didn't see any of the nicer bucks that were on the property. We saw some deer, but overall the movement was, mediocre. It was, they weren't moving with any kind of urgency. And as we get into this episode, you're going to find out a little bit about why that was the case, and then what we can look for to see a difference in the next few weeks of hunting. So let's take a break and then we'll come back and talk about strategy and behavior. Hoyt's Bow Hunting Whitetails is brought to you by Redneck Blinds, Code of Silence Apparel, Hunt Stand Pro Whitetail, Fuse Accessories, Elevate Tree Stands, B3 Releases and Broadheads, and Hoyt. Late season behavior really comes down to three things. You got to have three pieces of the equation in order for the equal sign to produce an exclamation point. I mean, we're looking for cold temperatures. We're looking for deer that have gotten back more or less into some type of daylight movement, and we're looking for an attractive food source. And you can sometimes get by with 2 out of the 3, deer that haven't been pressured and food without cold. Sometimes you can get by with food and cold and deer that have had a little bit of pressure, but you almost can never make this work without food. It's really tough because the whole behavior pattern of the whitetails now circles around the food sources. They're really focused now 100% on bedding and feeding and storing up enough fat, staying healthy enough, getting the carbohydrates that they need to stay warm and healthy through this winter ahead. So the hunting strategies obviously are going to revolve around those same 3 things. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know if you've got those 3 things. The trickiest one might be whether or not you've got deer that haven't been pressured, because that can be a little bit of like a sliding scale. And so I'll touch on that real quick first. If your hunting area had regular pressure during the firearm season, you're going to need probably 10 days of relative peace in that area for the deer to start to get back into daylight movement patterns. 2 weeks, definitely should get you there. In areas that haven't had direct pressure, more than likely there's been pressure on the neighboring properties, which means, again, these deer are feeling the heat from the hunting seasons, from the firearm season. So it's time to fall back a little bit now, scale back. Don't be rushing in right away. The first chance that you get, the first, cold front that you see or whatever. It's more important now to make sure that these deer have that chance to decompress and get relaxed and get back onto the food again. Because you can go into those spots and everything might make sense except for the fact that the deer are only moving at night. And now you're going in and you're making that disturbance You know, maybe you're bumping a few deer on the way out, possibly you're even bumping a few deer on the way in. Deer tend to bed really close to where they feed if it gets super cold. So you just got to be a little bit careful about that too. But you don't want to do that if the chances of the deer coming out in daylight are low, because then you got the high risk, low reward, and you don't want that. You want a situation where whatever risks you take, you know, the risk of educating deer is at least offset by the hope that they're going to be moving during daylight. So now you need to be more careful. You need to make sure that you've got, let's say, trail camera photos that suggest that there's a buck that you would shoot moving in daylight, or, you know, if you're just out hunting deer, you know, make sure that there's at least some does coming into that area in daylight. I wouldn't take the risk of going into a spot just sight unseen just to go deer hunting, because, like I said, the opportunity of educating those deer and putting them off any future pattern is too high. They're so much more wary now, and I think it's just a combination of things. It's not just the fact that the firearm season has come and gone. I mean, the rut has come and gone, so the distractions aren't there anymore. There's not any vegetation for the most part in the trees or even on the ground. The deer can just see more, they can sense more, they can hear more. You know, everything is just kind of laid out in front of them to pick up on the slightest hint of danger. So they're just a lot more cautious. And heck, I've spooked deer away from late season food plots just by raising my gloved hand up, you know, to wipe my nose. Just that little bit of movement sitting in a tree stand can clear a field. You've got maybe 3 or 4 or 5 does feeding and you're waiting for a buck to come out. One of them just happens to catch a glimpse of you out of the corner of her eye because you're up in a tree now that doesn't have any leaves in it. It's really tough hunting. So my point is, don't take risks. Wait until you know that there's odds are in your favor before you even go in. I also feel like this is the time to hunt out of ground blinds, even if you're bow hunting. For sure if you're gun hunting, you know, but this is a bow hunting channel, so we're going to talk bow hunting. I've had a lot of success getting close range opportunities on deer during the late season out of blinds. I won't say I've killed a bunch of bucks that way. I've killed a few that it's really hard to kill no matter what you're doing during the late season with a bow. But I've had plenty of opportunities to shoot does that I know that blinds are the way to go if you just want a close range opportunity during the late season, because once again, you take away at least 1, if not 2 of their senses, maybe even 3. You know, you eliminate their ability to see you moving if you're careful about, you know, how you stay out of the windows. If you keep the windows closed until right before the shot, in some cases you can eliminate even their ability to smell you if the wind is swirling. And potentially, you know, you can get away with a little bit more noise too, because the sound doesn't leave the blind quite as easily as if scuffing your feet on a tree stand platform, you know, would reach the deer, you know, if you're hunting out of a stand. So if you have the opportunity and you have either a chance to build one or a chance to buy one, the ground blinds are definitely, that's when they serve their greatest purpose. I hunt almost exclusively out of blinds during the late season for that reason, and I would recommend it, you know, wholeheartedly to anybody that will listen. It makes it a lot more fun too. I mean, you can bring a little LP heater in there and you can keep it warmer. You know, if it's a really cold day and you're hoping for the deer to move as a reaction to that, you know, frigid temperatures, you know, you got to be pretty dang tough to be up in a tree under those conditions. So sitting in a blind breaks the wind, you know, gives you a chance maybe to have a little LP heater going and make the time more enjoyable. This is not maybe purist hunting. You know, the purist, man, those guys suffer during the late season, and I just don't think I've got it in me anymore to hunt like that. You've got to be really, really tough to hunt in a tree when it's, you know, 15 below wind chill. I don't know if I was ever that tough, but I know I'm not now. So then one other thing too that I was going to leave you with before I get off this episode, I'll start wearing snow camo to and from my blind if there's some chance that the deer are bedding close. You know, it's just a small thing. Again, that assumes you've got snow. If you don't have snow, I mean, you sure don't want to do that. But if you got snow on the ground, it's just one more thing that you can do where they may not catch you, you know, quite as quickly if they're sitting someplace or bedding someplace where they can see the feeding area. if you're sneaking in there wearing white on snow, you got a lot better chance, especially if you're using a little bit of cover like, you know, a brushy fence line or standing corn or something like that. But if you're going in there with camouflage against snow, it's going to look like a black blob going across there. It's just too much contrast. They can pick that up real easily. It's amazing what you can get away with wearing snow camo in the wintertime when there's snow on the ground. I mean, the deer just don't register it nearly as well as they do, you know, normal camouflage or, you know, anything else that you might wear. So keep that in mind. So getting back to behavior, what to look for. We're looking for, like I said, you know, you got to have food, bottom line. If you don't have food, you're trying to hunt the patterns where the deer are traveling between bedding and feeding, and that can work. I know some people who have some success hunting that type of strategy. It's just really, really tough hunting. But if you've got the food, you can figure out a way, you know, because now you've got the destination, you can figure out a way to make it work when the deer are coming to you. You know, semi-pressured deer or unpressured deer, ideal. But the final piece of the puzzle is the cold. You want it to be, ideally, a cold snap. I always feel like the deer move best on a front. You know, whether it's a cold front when it's been, you know, a little bit more mild, or surprisingly, you'll catch them moving on a warm front during the late season too if it's been really cold. We've had some really, really good hunting over the years when a warm front comes through, you know, after a prolonged period of cold during the late season. So keep that in mind too. But ideally it's a front. And if it's super cold, that's usually when the deer are really going towards the carbohydrates, which is the grain. They're going towards corn, sorghum, beans, ideally. But if you don't have those things, then the brassicas, you know, the other food sources, you know, maybe fall rye, whatever else you've got, can be attractive too. But they really do prefer grains when it gets super cold because, again, they're looking for the carbs. Put it this way, it keeps them warm. It gives them the calories, the type of calories that they need to stay warm during this time. So I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to be after it from here until our season ends the 10th of January. So I'm going to hunt every time that the pieces fall into place. And I'm going to be careful about not overhunting spots. I'm going to make sure, like I said, that I've got some evidence of a daylight movement pattern on a buck that I want to shoot in one of the spots before I go in there. Doesn't mean I won't hunt some generic locations hoping to shoot does and maybe get lucky, you know, but the spots that I'm serious about, the places where I really believe I've got bucks that I want to shoot, I'm going to play those spots really, really careful. You might only get a couple chances. You know, it's your first time in is by far going to be your best. So I'm going to leave you with that. Just be really careful. Don't overhunt your best spots. Make sure you've got, you know, a pretty good formula in place before you go in. Well, I appreciate you joining me. I appreciate you watching this whole series this year. We've enjoyed doing it, and we'll do it again next year. We'll see if we can expand on it in some way to make it even more helpful. It's been a lot of fun doing it. So, like I said, thanks for joining us for this week's episode of the Whitetail Watch, produced by Hoyt's Bow Hunting Whitetails. And remember to always dream big.